Begin the lap zipper by preparing your zipper and then cutting your piece of fabric in half. Turn the fabric so that the right sides are together, and then you're going to zip up your zipper and lay it next to your fabric so that the top edge of the zipper is at the top edge of the fabric and the top stop is where you're going to be placing a pin for reference, about an eighth of an inch below the bottom stop. Next, at your machine, change your stitch length to a 5, and we're going to be using a 3/4 inch seam allowance to baste down the fabric until we get to the pin. Once you get to the pin, change your stitch length to 2.5, and then you are going to back stitch for 2 stitches, straight stitch, and then go all the way to the bottom of the fabric where you will back stitch again. Clip the bottom thread and keep the top basting thread intact. At the iron, you are going to press open the seam, first on the back side, and then flip over your fabric to press on the front, making sure that there aren't any bubbles or tucks. Next, you're going to be laying your zipper so that the coil or the top of the zipper is facing down. And then we're going to be attaching one side of the zipper tape to the seam allowance. So make sure that your zipper tape, the coil is centered on the seam line. And then I kind of like to pinch that so that I've only got the seam allowance. And then I've got about an eighth of an inch of seam allowance extending past my zipper tape. And I'm going to continue pinning at the bottom, middle, and then top of the fabric so that I am only pinning the zipper tape to the seam allowance of the fabric. Next, you're going to unzip your zipper just a little ways. Make sure that the coil is butting up against the seam and place a pin at the top of the fabric. At your machine with a regular stitch length of about 2.5, you're going to line up and butt up the edge of the zipper foot, of your narrow foot with the edge of your fabric. Stitch down, and then once you get to your zipper head, you're going to keep the needle in the machine, pull the zipper head up, and then continue stitch down the length of the zipper until you reach that bottom stop, removing the pins as you go. This will be holding our zipper in place. After you get to that bottom stop and you back stitch, you can remove the fabric from the machine, clip your threads, and then we're going to be turning the zipper over so that we can top stitch the fabric in place so that it doesn't bubble up and get caught. So all I've done is I've tipped the fabric over and I'm only stitching the seam allowance and the zipper tape and then the seam allowance on the opposite side. You can unzip your zipper all the way if you'd like, and then you are going to stitch so that the edge of the narrow presser foot is lining up with the seam of the fabric, and the other side is going to be bumping up against the edge of the coil. This should give you about an 1/8. Once you get to the bottom and you've back stitched at the zipper stop, move your fabric, clip your threads, and now we're going to stitch the other side of the zipper. So now you can zip the zipper all the way up back to the top, and then you're going to fold the fabric over the zipper. So now we've got the other set of seam allowances, or just the other seam allowance on top of the right side of the zipper. At the bottom of your zipper, you'll be able to feel the stop with your finger, and you're going to place a pin just a little bit below that. This is where we're going to start our stitch. At the machine, you're going to start about 2 or 3 stitches away from the seam line so that your back stitch ends at that seam line. You're going to stitch back into that ditch, and then once you get there, you're going to stitch forward. Once you're about an 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper coil, you'll keep the machine needle in the machine, pivot, and now you're going to stitch up the length of the other side of the zipper's tape. You should be able to feel the zipper tape edge with your presser foot and stitch up a consistent about 5/8 of an inch. If it's helpful for you to draw this on with chalk, you're welcome to. Once you get to the point where the zipper head is in the way, keep the needle in the machine and then you're going to start to unpick the basting stitch in the zipper. And then once you get far enough to move the zipper head down, you can push the zipper head down into the fabric. And then here you can either repin the top of the zipper tape, or you can just lay it out so that the seam allowance looks consistent over the zipper, using about that 5/8 of an inch stitch line from the fold of the fabric. And then once you get to the top, you'll end with a back stitch. Go ahead and clip your threads, and now we'll remove the rest of the basting stitches. Again, I like to unpick this way instead of cutting all of the stitches. If you cut all of the stitches, then you're going to have to pick all of them out, whereas if you unpick them, you'll be able to pull out the thread in a couple of passes. Once you get to the very bottom of where you started that other stitch, just unpick the threads and then head on over to the iron. At the iron, being sure not to damage the coil by keeping the iron on there too long, you're going to press the bottom of the fabric, and then you're going to unzip the zipper so that we can press the top. Make sure that you've caught all of the seam allowances in the zipper tape, and you've now completed your first lapped zipper.